Top 10 horror games that are based on true stories. 10. OutLast. OutLast is a horror survival game featuring the playable character of a news journalist, who investigates an abandoned asylum nestled deep in the mountains of Colorado. Mount Massive Asylum is named after a real mountain in the Colorado Range, and the building itself is modeled after the H. Richardson complex located in Buffalo, New York. There are also other elements from real life in OutLast, as the game's villainous Murkoff Corporation's gross doings were heavily inspired by Project MK Ultra. In the USA in the mid-50s, MK Ultra involved involuntary subjects being exposed to what was essentially mind control via the use of drugs, torture, and information overload. In OutLast, the Murkoff Corporation picked up where the government left off and continued the terrifying experiments. Nine. Granny. Just a quick disclaimer, I would like to say that Granny might not be based on a true story. The Granny video game features an unnamed protagonist trapped in a house, needing to solve puzzles while avoiding the Granny antagonist to get out of the house in a time period of only 5 or 6 days. This game is somewhat based on the Granny Ripper, an old Russian lady who murdered 13 people. A family discovered a trash bag with somebody's dismembered torso in their apartment complex. Checking the security cameras, you do see Tamara Samsonova, aka the Granny Ripper, dragging a trash bag with the torso. You can also see with the pot, and it is claimed that inside the pot is the victim's head and lungs. You would never think a grandma can ever do this kind of stuff. Well, it gets worse. When investigators entered her place, they saw a large knife covered in blood in the kitchen. Also, blood was splattered all over the bathroom as well, and police also found her diary, which inside is astrology and black magic. In the diary, the Granny Ripper would write descriptive murders that she has committed dating back 20 years ago. One entry even described her most recent murder, which she was caught for, which was cutting her neighbor's body into pieces while putting them into plastic bags. It was also assumed that she was a cannibal, considering she would talk about cannibalism in her diary. When she was arrested, she was openly willingly to confess to all of her crimes that she did in the past, and she is now locked up in prison, and she will also die in prison. Eight. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Atari 2600. All media surrounding the Texas Chainsaw Massacre are based on the same event, and the Atari game is no different. The 1983 game Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Atari 2600, was based upon the film of the same name, but it still comes from a real-life incident. The gruesome inspiration for the series is the prolific killer, the Butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein. While not from Texas himself, his violent and disgusting acts were the basis for the Chainsaw Massacre films. The setting of the houses, and the plot itself, were both based on Gein's life. He is known for creating furniture from human parts, among other terrifying practices. 7. The Night Ripper. The game follows Rachel and her late-night walk home from a diner. The streets are stalked by the titular Night Ripper, a Jack the Ripper-inspired serial killer. Rachel's goal is to scavenge the city for change for the payphone and call her roommate to unlock her house so she can retreat home. All the while, she's hunted by the Night Ripper, who patrols the slums in his car and gets out and pursues Rachel if he spots her on the streets. If he does end up seeing you, a panic and adrenaline meter will come up on screen. When the Night Ripper starts chasing you, you will gain adrenaline and lose your chance to run and move slow. Click LMB when he chases you to keep your panic meter to the highest part in order for your chance at survival. In the subway, there is a gun somewhere in a little building. He can be scared off if you find the gun and shoot him. He will be free to roam in the slums. After finally making it home safe, she rests on the couch as the credits roll, only to hear someone break in, followed by duck sounds. The credits end after that. This game is based on Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper was an unidentified serial killer active in the impoverished districts in and around Whitechapel in the East End of London in 1888. In both criminal case files and the contemporary journalistic accounts, the killer was called the Whitechapel Murderer and Leather Apron. Attacks ascribed to Jack the Ripper typically involved female prostitutes who lived and worked in the slums of the East End of London. Their throats were cut prior to abdominal mutilations. The removal of internal organs from at least 3 of the victims led to proposals that their killer had some anatomical or surgical knowledge. Rumors that the murders were connected intensified in September and October 1888, and numerous letters were received by media outlets and Scotland Yard from individuals purporting to be the murderer. The name Jack the Ripper originated in a letter written by an individual claiming to be the murderer that was disseminated in the media. The letter is widely believed to have been a hoax and may have been written by journalists to heighten interest in the story and increase their newspaper's circulation. The From Hell letter received by George Lusk of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee came with half of a preserved human kidney, purportedly taken from one of the victims. The public came increasingly to believe in a single serial killer known as Jack the Ripper, mainly because of both the extraordinarily brutal nature of the murders and media coverage of the crimes. Extensive newspaper coverage bestowed widespread and enduring international notoriety on the Ripper, and the legend solidified. A police investigation into a series of 11 brutal murders committed in Whitechapel and Spitalfields between 1888 and 1891 was unable to connect all the killings conclusively to the murders of 1888. 5 victims Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly are known as the Canonical Five, and their murders between August 31 and November 9, 1888 are often considered the most likely to be linked. The murders were never solved, and the legends surrounding these crimes became a combination of historical research, folklore, and pseudo-history, capturing public imagination to the present day. 6. Slender the 8 Pages. Slender, the 8 Pages, originally titled Slender, is a free-to-play indie-developed first-person survival horror video game released in June 2012 as a beta for Microsoft Windows and OS X by Parsec Productions, using the Unity engine. Developed by Mark J. Hadley, the game is based on the quasi-folklore meme figure known as the Slender Man, who is depicted as a tall humanoid creature wearing a black suit and tie with a white face and no facial features. The character is known for the ominous, although fictitious, abduction of countless children in dark, mysterious settings, such as deep forests and abandoned buildings. Even though this game isn't based on a true story, but the main antagonist, Slender Man, did inspire two girls to attempt to murder their friend, on May 31, 2014, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, United States. Two 12-year-old girls, Anissa Wire and Morgan Geyser, lured their friend Peyton Lutner into a forest and stabbed her 19 times in an attempt to appease the fictional character Slender Man. Lutner crawled to a road where she was found, and recovered after 6 days in the hospital. Wire and Geyser were found not guilty by mental disease or defect and committed to mental health institutions for sentences of 25 years to life and 40 years to life, respectively. After 7 years, Wire was granted early release and will be under supervision until age 37. '5. Silent Hill. What comes to mind when Silent Hill is mentioned is not exactly a pleasant place, and certainly not one that people would like to believe exists. It is, however, based upon a real place. Silent Hill draws inspiration the town of Centralia, in Pennsylvania. Centralia is entrenched in its own tragedy. A once prosperous mining town, it succumbed to a fire that broke out in the mines under the town. The fire could not be contained, creating burning sinkholes in the ground. The fire is still said to be burning to this day, and the population of the town has dropped to almost none. This tragic story lends itself well to the nightmare scenarios in Silent Hill. Thankfully though, the only monster in Centralia is the fire, not anything like a zombie nurse. 4. The Midnight Man. Believe it or not, this game is based on a real ritual of the same name. The Midnight Game is an old pagan ritual, used mainly as punishment for those who have broken the laws of the pagan religion in question. While it was mainly used as a scare tactic to not disobey the gods, there is still a very existent chance of death to those who play the Midnight Game. There is an even higher chance of permanent mental scarring. It is highly recommended that you do not play the Midnight Game. However, for those few thrill seekers searching for a rush, or for those delving into obscure occult rituals, these are simple instructions on how to play. Do so at your own risk. It must be exactly 12 a.m. when you begin performing the ritual. Otherwise, it will not work. You will need a candle, a piece of paper, a writing implement, matches or a lighter, salt, a wooden door, and at least 1 drop of your own blood. If you are playing with multiple people, they will need their own of the aforementioned materials and they will have to perform the steps below accordingly. Step 1. Write your full name, first, middle, and last, on the piece of paper. Put at least 1 drop of blood on the paper. Allow it to soak into the paper. Step 2. Turn off all of the lights in the place you are doing this. Go to your wooden door, and place the paper with your name on it in front of the door. Now, take out the candle and light it. Place it on top of the paper. Step 3. Knock on the door 22 times. The hour must be 12 a.m. upon the final knock. Then, open the door, blow out the candle, and close the door. You have just allowed the Midnight Man to enter your house. Step 4. Immediately relight your candle. This is where the game begins. You must now lurk around your now completely dark house, with the lit candle in your hand. Your goal is to avoid the Midnight Man at all costs, until 3:33 a.m. Should your candle ever go out, that means the Midnight Man is near you. You must relight your candle in the next 10 seconds. If you are not successful in doing this, you must then immediately surround yourself with a circle of salt. If you are unsuccessful in both of your actions, the Midnight Man will create a hallucination of your greatest fear, and rip out your organs one by one. You will feel it, but you will be unable to react. If you are successful in creating the circle of salt, you must remain in there until 3:33 a.m. 3. Resident Evil Village. Some fans may not know that the most recent Resident Evil installment contains a location based on a real-world place. Resident Evil Village features a vampiric family by the name of Dimitrescu, who inhabit Castle Dimitrescu atop the Dark Village. The real counterpart and inspiration for this is Pele's Castle, located in Transylvania. Fans in Romania and close to Transylvania have even gone to the castle to take pictures to compare the two locations. The dramatic castle is truly a great building to base a game location off, and it complements the story beautifully. 2. Kholat. This eerie game is set in the cold, creepy environment of the Ural Mountains, Russia, which in the game renames Kholat. According to the game, back in 1959, 9 students went suddenly missing here. Legendary actor Sean Bean narrates the tale, and adds to the mystery and fear that follows the player while investigating the strange disappearance. The real-life inspiration for this game was the Dyatlov Pass incident of the same year. This tragic incident involved the disappearance of 9 student skiers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute who, over the course of a few months, mysteriously vanished. After no messages were received from the group, an investigation started, eventually turning up the belongings and strangely mutilated bodies of the students. The mystery remains even today. 1. Tattletail. Tattletail is a survival horror game created by Wageter Electronics. The game features Furby-like toys called Baby Talking Tattletail, which the player must care for while avoiding the pursuit of its recalled predecessor, Mama Tattletail. The game was released on Steam on December 28, 2016. Even though the game is not based on a true story, however, there is a similar story, Robert Eugene Otto was a young boy who lived in Key West, Florida with his parents. In 1904, he got a gift from his grandfather while he was on a trip to Germany. It was a stiff clown doll, and Gene immediately became attached to his new best friend. He even named the doll Robert, after himself. And from that point onwards, he only preferred to go by his middle name, Gene. Soon after, strange things would start to happen around the house. Household objects would be found missing or broken, and every time Gene's parents asked him what happened, he would always say, "Robert did it." Sometimes his parents would hear their son talking to Robert in his playroom, and they would hear another child's voice respond, but when they opened the door, they only found their son and the doll. Eventually the Ottos have had enough of the strange paranormal activity, and locked Robert the doll in a box in the attic. The sailor suit that the doll now wears is a real one that Gene used to wear himself. Gene grew up to become an artist, and he married a beautiful woman named Annette Parker. Gene was given his childhood home as a wedding gift. In the attic, he finds his old friend, Robert, and he immediately became attached to his best friend yet again. Annette didn't really like the doll. In fact, she was very creeped out by it. Ever since Gene found Robert, strange things began to happen again. Annette swore that Robert could change his facial expressions and move by himself. Gene died in 1974 and Annette sold the house to Myrtle. In 1994, Myrtle donated Robert to the Fort East Martello Museum after she encountered strange paranormal activity. Robert the doll still lives at the East Martello Museum, sitting on a chair inside a glass box. If you want to take a picture of him, you must ask nicely. If you take his picture without asking or disrespect him in any way, he will get angry and curse you with bad luck.
Mama's coming!